Okay.
So I'll let you take it off.
Okay. Do you want to scroll down? Okay, great. Next one. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. We'll go back to Rob. Rob's going to be doing most of the talking, but thank you, everybody, for joining our presentation today. We're going to be focusing on DELMIAWorks ERP software, and this is my contact details, a little bit about my resume, and wanted to kind of paint a picture for you as to why people are implementing this system. Based on a conversation we just had last week, can you imagine if you had a bushel and you put $1,600 in that bushel and rolled it over to your waste bin and threw it in every day? That's what was happening to them. And 16 is the low side. And so when you talk about how much money you could be losing and the application of this technology, it's a just great discussion that we're having with these companies. So just keep that in your mind. Think about how much money you're putting into a barrel and throwing away, and why you want to look at DELMIAWorks software. Okay, Rob, go.
All right, so my name is Robhauser. I'm a system architect here at Javelin. I have 30-some plus years of experience with everything from CAD to manufacturing, IT, all sorts of fun stuff. So I feel your pain. I've experienced it. I've lived it. And my job here at Javelin is to help translate your issues into solutions and primarily get the data to move so that people can make smart decisions with it. So let's jump in. So one of the key things with this is the fact that the whole aspect, if I can stop my mouse from working, the whole aspect of everything that we're doing these days is trying to make sure that we've got good information moving to the places that we need it to go to. Now, a lot of times, as we can see by the headline up there, the senior executives, the C-suite, the owners, the operations manager, all these people cannot make intelligent decisions when they're using disconnected applications. So when we've got various Excel spreadsheets that are people that are using to run their departments, when they've got Access databases, which are really on their way out. Microsoft is starting to discontinue Access and all those things. And it's really not made to go ahead and connect a lot of people together. So the reliance on those pieces of software with ad hoc components from other vendors really makes sure that we have a reliance then on broken pieces of data. And that's not in these days what we're trying to come up with. So what's happened is DELMIAWorks is what was called IQMS. So Dassault Systems went and purchased IQMS, which has been around for 32 plus years, and it is now called DELMIAWorks. So the key thing with this is the software hasn't changed. It's still the same people doing the development, the same implementation teams, the help desk. It's all the IQMS people. It's just been rebranded to DELMIAWorks by Dassault Systems. So Dassault Systems, for those of you who don't know, has multiple brands. There's CATIA, there's SolidWorks, there's Innovia, DELMIA, which is the parent portion of the DELMIAWorks. DELMIA is the industrial side of things, manufacturing side. But there's Simulia, Genovia, Exelead. There's all sorts of different software components. So if you ever check out Dassault Systems, you'll see that it is just this giant monolith of a company that decided to go and bring in a proper ERP system into the fold of all the other applications. And that really helps to make sure that we go and tie all this software together. So Javelin comes into play from this because we're your trusted partner for some of you. We are your supplier for SolidWorks software. The nice thing about that is we can take that data and we can move the data between SolidWorks, and if you have PDM, the product data management software, we can move all of those bills of material, the drawings, the data, and we can put it seamlessly into the ERP side of the business, which is generally, purchase orders and getting in your raw materials, manufacturing things in the shop floor. And we'll talk in a second about what the difference is between ERP and MES. But really what we're doing is allowing you to leverage all of that data from all of your software and have it seamlessly connect. So we have no orphaned fields, no stranded data, no disconnected pieces. It's all tied together. So DELMIAWorks by itself, if we take effect what was originally in there for IQMS, and now has again been rebranded as DELMIAWorks, so it's been around for over 30 years. 20% is spent on R&D, so the software continues to evolve and grow. So there's over 1,200 plus companies that have actually installed IQMS or DELMIAWorks, as the case may be. And in 2018, which is the last year that I've got numbers for because of the changeover, there was 95 companies that joined into the DELMIAWorks side of things, or the IQMS side. The key thing with this, it's a single ERP platform. There's one piece of software, there's a single database, and all of the modules are created by the normal developers from IQMS. So it's not different pieces of software joined by different companies where, you know, somebody's gone and said, oh, I like that, let's go buy them, and we'll just squeeze it in there and try to make the data connect. It doesn't work that way. Everything is very coherent. It's all one database. Everything talks to each other. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. One of the forefronts of what we do with DELMIAWorks is we do not do custom modifications. We can actually configure the software, but we don't change code for particular customers. If there's going to be an upgrade or somebody has a great idea for a piece of code, it gets actually put out to everybody. And what that allows then is when you go to upgrade your software, you don't have to worry about going and trying to fit in these customizations and rewriting everything to work with the latest and greatest version and release. So it really comes in handy to have a single database, and B, no custom modifications to the software. Everybody runs the same code base.
So that's a very important point, because we've seen companies that are running SolidWorks 7, 8 years behind because they have not upgraded their ERP software. So there's a significant value to having no customizations, although it is highly configurable.
Yes, yes, we can generally take care of anything that you need to do with the configurations, and we'll talk a little bit about more about that in a moment. So let's take a look at what DELMIAWorks is. So it is complete end-to-end, and by that we mean order processing. So everything from the quote, you know, you can put out several quotes, you can receive a purchase order, you can schedule it, you can go through production, and then you can ship it. And of course, all of that ties into the finance side. So on the ERP side, of course, everything financially has to connect with that, because if you're going to receive a PO, you've got to have a customer set up. You've got to be able to go in and keep track of what your terms and conditions are. You've got to have all of that information that would go through, and you've got to be able to make sure that you can manage that entire process. The other aspect is when you've got the MES side, which is the manufacturing enterprise system, what we'd be able to do with that since 1993 is make sure that we can track all the information on the shop floor. So if you have machinery that cycles, maybe you've got a punch press that just goes bang, bang, bang and knocks the parts out, we can connect that into the system through the MES side of things. And every time it strokes and counts a cycle, the number required will decrement by that number of pieces. So say you've got a die with 5 components on it, you stroke the press, we decrement the amount required now by 5 because those pieces have now been made. The other nice thing about that is if an operator marks something as scrap, then that goes and increases that required count by X number of scrap pieces to make sure that you're actually going to complete the order to the number of pieces the customer has requested. So all of these pieces are tied together, and really no other software does that in a very cohesive manner. We've got both ends of this taken care of. Now, the other area that then comes into is all sorts of compliance aspects. There's PLM, the SPC side of it. So if you've got any kind of requirements for ISO, FDA, automotive, aircraft, all of those details can get brought into production, even to the point where we can go ahead and put the training information that an operator may need. And on top of that, you can also make sure that you have a certified operator running that process for that component for that customer. That makes sure that if somebody isn't there on time, somebody else goes to run the work, it's not going to allow them to sign in to go and run those unless they've actually completed the training, if you so choose. You don't have to set it up that way, but lots of companies do prefer that to make sure that they have all of their compliance information in order. Now, going ahead to the purchasing, the EDI, and the warehouse management system, again, all of this is tied in. It's one backbone that runs all of this, and the nice thing about that is as you consume inventory or raw materials to go and manufacture those components, when you're running your cycles, it's actually backflushing those items out of your raw material side, and it's going and putting them into your finished goods. So you don't even have to have somebody come back to go and take care of all that information. As you run the components, that raw material is backflushing and taking away from what you had in inventory. Of course, that's all then tied into what your min-maxes are on your requirements. So if you do need to order something, if you have another job in the queue that's coming down and it needs the material, it's going to flag somebody to let them know that these pieces are actually being consumed. We also have a look ahead feature where we can take a look at various things and we can see what the next 10, 12, 15, 30, whatever days up in advance, what are my material requirements? So I can make sure that we have all of those material on ordered. We can make sure that we know what the delivery time schedule is, what those lead times are. So we can make sure that all of those things line up to go ahead and create a delivery time. And what that allows us to do right from the beginning of order processing is give you a very good promise date for the customer. So when they call and put that order in back in the order processing side, you're actually going to see a promise date that's going to be real. It's going to take into all the account for moving material around, purchases, how much raw stock I have, whether there's something already being ordered or it needs to be ordered. All of those things are tied together and integrated. And the key to that is we have one code base and we have one database, as I mentioned earlier. So all of these components are tied together.
That's a great point. That is so important. I don't know if you want to slide back one slide, but imagine a production operation where everybody has their own particular spreadsheet, and we all know that as soon as you create a spreadsheet, it's out of date, right? And if you're not working with the most current information, like Rob said before, you can't make good decisions. And so rather than having 17 spreadsheets all integrated with whatever piece of data that's feeding it, it's really valuable if you have one database and can take a look at a document that gives you current, real-time, accurate information.
Exactly. And we see this, as John said, all the time. So because DELMIAWorks is now tied in with SolidWorks through the Dassault system, we can now also take anything that you're doing with engineering. We can link those CAD models. We can link the bills of material. The drawings themselves can actually get put right into the ERP system so they're available to the floor. The bills of material are automatically added into the system. And the reason that's being done is you don't have to retype things. And I don't know how many times I see errors in bills of material on the manufacturing floor, and I go back and I trace it to the fact that somebody has literally gone and made the wrong entry when they're retyping all that data in, and they're keying in either a small BOM or a very lengthy BOM, a very involved bill of material. And that information is then keyed in incorrectly into the ERP system. And of course, the mistake just starts to go ahead and move from there to there. The other distinction we make is on the engineering side, we have a BOM or a bill of material. The moment we move that into an ERP system, that BOM still has the same acronym, but it now means bill of manufacture. And the reason that happens is now we're putting all of the processing and manufacturing data on top of that bill of material, and we're adding things like routings, machine processes, operations, whether it be an automatic operation or a manual one. All of those various components are added in automatically, and it just makes it so much easier when we can go from the engineering side and push it into the manufacturing side, again, without having to rekey that data. So what is DELMIAWorks? Basically, it's a single platform that lowers the cost. What it does is it really makes sure that everything that you're doing is very tied together. So you don't need to support multiple systems. There's no multiple touch points. You're not playing one vendor against another vendor, and each one is literally going and pointing at the other one for being at fault when data doesn't move around. And because the interface is all controlled by DELMIAWorks, it's very intuitive. It follows the window structure, so everybody knows how to work. So we don't have to really teach you anything new. It's just the functionality that we need to show you. Clicking through the screens is very easy. And as you'll see in a moment, we actually have these jump features that we can jump to different operations from one area to another, especially for customer service. If they're trying to answer a question on the phone, it really comes in handy. The other area that comes in work well is if right now you say you've got an on-premise solution and you're contemplating going to the cloud, because we're a single code base, it's really not a problem to go ahead and move from an on-premise to in the cloud or vice versa. So your future computing systems are all set up. There's no worries about customizations or compatibilities, as we've already seen. And the users don't experience any kind of a difference in their screens. They're actually not even aware of where the platform is residing. And that's awesome. That's very, very cool these days. So real-time monitoring is on the MES side, and what that really comes into play is you can now start to make decisions because you can see what's happening on the floor. If you've got automated processes, if you've got assembly lines or manufacturing lines, maybe you've got a stamping press or an injection molder, any kind of a machine can be tied into the MES side of DELMIAWorks, and those cycles and inputs and scrap and whether the machine is running or not can be put into the system, and it gives you real-time monitoring of what's actually happening on your floor. So you don't need to wait for the end of the shift to go ahead and see what the shift totals are for a particular product that you're making for one of your customers or for inventory. You see in real time how many is required, and it decrements every time that machine cycles. So you get a real-time happening of what's going on. That can also be displayed on a dashboard that are very easily configurable. And the nice thing about this is it gives you business intelligence so that you can see what's happening on each machine. It's like I said, it's updated in real time. The other area that then gets pulled in is maintenance. So if you have a machine that requires periodic maintenance, not only can you schedule that, which then feeds back into your customer promise date, because it's going to take into account that the machine's going to be down for 4 hours for replacing a hydraulic hose or changing tooling over or what it might be. The other area that comes into play is you can actually create the work orders for the service department to go ahead and make sure they've got all their components. They have their tools, they've got manpower lined up. They know the machine's going to be down between 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. Because there's some sophisticated maintenance that needs to be taken care of or replacement components. Production's made aware of it. Manufacturing, everything is, it's cohesive. Everyone knows where the manpower is going to be. But likewise, like I said, the manufacturing and the maintenance departments are in key. They know what's happening, and the maintenance department can make sure they've got all their information, all their equipment. And if they don't, they can reschedule, and therefore they're not going to impact manufacturing. They know they can put work back in it. And that's all tied together and automated. So let's take a look at the fundamentals. What are the manufacturing types in the markets? So what it does is it provides reliable ERP software specifically for manufacturing processes. And it doesn't matter if you're a small, if you're a single plant manufacturer, or you're a large multi-plant global, DELMIAWorks can get set up specifically to fit your business needs. So the manufacturing types are greater than actually what we see here, but metal stamping and fab, metal cutting, plastic injection molding, extrusions, assemblies, packaging and co-packaging. You know, the end markets are, you know, as you can see, automotive, medical, industrial, consumer, food and beverage, all sorts of different areas can take advantage of the DELMIAWorks system. So in a nutshell, it's a role-based system. There's several access points that you can connect to it. There's a component called Smart Page, which gives the users access on their normal desktops, or it can be connected to a web-enabled device, whether it be a smartphone or a tablet, or a dedicated dumb terminal down on the shop floor. And what that allows people on the shop floor is to have input into the system. They can either create shipping labels, packing slips, component labels, pallet labels, but they can also go ahead and see what the number of components required to finish the job is. They can take a look at raw material shortages to make sure they've got all the materials that they need. There's all sorts of monitoring and things that can be done, and all of that can be accessed by a touchscreen. They don't even need to take their gloves off if that's the kind of facility that you have. They can touch the panel and go ahead and move between the screens, and they can be aware of what's happening and what's going to be required next on the particular system. And because it's so fast to move between screens, like I said, we can jump to screens. It's very easy to click through them. The configurable dashboards, we start with 1,800 plus configurable components, and it's very easy for either us to set them up during implementation, or once you've got the system, you can go ahead and change those as you see fit, as you grow and experience the system, and as your business grows and changes. What that allows us to do really is make sure that the system is not only expandable and easily grown with you, But that real-time information gives you specific summaries and makes you, have better decision capabilities. But it can also improve efficiencies, excuse me, on single source solutions. So you can make sure that all those modules are tied together because they're all written by DELMIAWorks. The other area that then comes into play is we can speed up productivity. Because we can reduce the implementation time, there's only one database, and because all that data is tied together, there's no complicated interfaces, no data transfers like some of the other ERP offerings have. And in the future, if you decide to add an optional module, all of the base data is already there. All of your customer information is there, your purchase order, all that information is automatically available to these other modules, so they tie right in. So we don't have to go and repopulate some of the history like a lot of the other systems do.
I think that's a great point, and you're right. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where we're going to show you that it's a very modular system. There's a lot of capabilities, and not everybody implements everything all at once. Typically, they're done in phases. But the whole idea that you're generating information, putting it into the system, so if today you don't have a specific module, you don't have to worry 6 months or a year from now to load a whole bunch of data or go back into history. The information will already be there because it's already being generated by the system. And when you get around to implementing it, it's going to be there ready for you. And it's just a great example of how you don't have to worry about tying to other software platforms or software manufacturers. It's all in one database and ready to use when you are.
Exactly. So let's take a quick look and see what an ERP system is. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to dive through and see what an MES system is. We're going to take a look at what order processing and fulfillment is, reducing inventory costs, and then we'll take a look at how to maximize plant floor throughput. So with the system itself, when we take a look at what an ERP is, it's very key to understand of all the connectivity, all the touch points that an ERP really has. And unfortunately, if you haven't had a full-blown ERP in your business before, it's almost not apparent of not the fact that it's complicated, it's just involved. There are a lot of pieces of data moving around in a regular ERP system. So as you can see here, we touch all the bases from sales and marketing, CRM, finance, manufacturing, HR modules, or supply chain, purchasing, project management. So there's lots of different areas to help improve the operations of a business. But not only that, it communicates that data amongst everyone that's actually involved in the system. So anyone who has to have a view into the system can go ahead and see, and through the granular security, we can make sure they only see the areas where they really should be focusing their attention, and other areas are actually not available to them. Now, a nice thing about this is it actually works out very well that the CRM module and the finance modules are included. So everything that you see in blue here is automatically part of the standard system. So you get an integrated CRM module, the ERP side and all the accounting and finance systems are all put together. And of course, they all talk together. So there are optional modules in finance if required. And what these do is give you additional areas that you may need either right away, and we can help assess you and see if you need them, or maybe perhaps there's something that you're going to grow into down the line. What that does is allows your implementation costs, if you're not looking for all these modules, we can keep them low. And then when you're ready for those, they can be added on. And again, we go back to this whole single database thing again. We don't really have to worry about taking a lot of time to go and connect all of these things because it's built in. So let's take a quick look and see how this information works. We'll do a real quick video here. Well, we said quick. There we go. And nothing's fast when you say it is.
We could, yeah, we could send these links to you so you can see them at full speed because yeah, it is slowing down a bit.
Is it slowing down? Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's a little slow.
All right, let's get out of that then. And we'll chug along. So we'll send those links out. We have a few more that we can send into. So let's take a look at then the benefits of DELMIAWorks. if we can go back. So, yeah, it's really slowing down. It's even slowing down from my clicking. One more time. We can improve quality. I can't win. We can improve quality. We can make sure that we lower the cost of inventory. There's lots of different areas that the ERP allows you to do. The MES side is something that other people generally are not aware of, and it's not quite as involved, you would think, as what we have for an ERP system, but of course it all connects together. We need to be able to see the order receipts and the shipping control information. Where does the customer want it? Is it going to the place of the PO, or is it moving elsewhere? There's production planning. There's demand forecasting that needs to be done with all of the raw material and the labor. The inventory control, engineering, all of these different components, as you can see on the screen, need to tie together. And what that then does is it adds into the area that the MES side of things couples the CRM, the ERP, the finance into things such as quality management, labeling, production control and reporting. All these different pieces connect together. And just like we saw with the finance module with the optional components, again, we have optional modules available for the MES side. So if you want to connect your machines in, you don't need to do that right away. We can do real-time production process monitoring. If you want to monitor pressures or velocities of certain machines, we can take that exact data in. Or with the production monitoring, we can just read the cycle counts and things like that. And there's warehouse management, all sorts of different workforce components. So we have lots of different pieces that we can add in for you. And of course, with the ERP side of things, we have optional modules that are available too. So not everybody requires some of these things, but we can take a look and see if those are something that might be needed. Maybe you want to do wireless inventory control, or you need to manage your outsourcing in a little bit more detail because you have lots of components going to third-party vendors, and you need to be able to go and work and see what's in transit and where things are done and what the ETA is for something. All sorts of different components tie together for that. So you're really able to enable an agile and responsive manufacturing operation by tying all the MES and the ERP sides of things together. So let's take a look at order processing. We're going to send you a video on that as well. This one's going to take a little bit of time in order to go through. So let's just see if we can jump out of that one. And what we're basically going to be able to send you the video on, because if I could get this to cooperate, we can make sure that we can set accurate expectations. We can ensure that things are working the way you want them to work. All in all, the way things work with the PDM system and order fulfillment is making sure that we can get that information in the system, make sure it is cohesive with the manufacturing side of things, and the order processing is all tied together. You can set that customer expectation. You can make sure you're going to avoid delivery dates. When I take the order, I can actually see a real customer promise date. And if the customer decides to call in and wants to add something, you're going to be able to tell them what that's going to do to the promise date. Yes, I can deliver the first 10,000 on this date, and the remaining 5,000 that you want will come 5 days later. And you can make sure that you hit those.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's shared among just about every company that Rob and I have spoken with. They're just not sure of what's happening on the shop floor. They're not sure when an order is going to come out. They're not going to be able to promise a reasonable delivery estimate, and just knowing where things are on the shop floor can make a huge difference, not just in making the customer happy, but certain companies have in their contracts that they will receive a certain amount of payment after a certain delivery. And if you don't know what's going out and when it goes out, your payment, your accounts receivable are not going to be able to keep up or be able to invoice at the right time. So it has an effect throughout the company if you're not sure exactly when your products are going to be ready to ship and when they actually go out.
Let's take a look at how we reduce inventory costs quickly. again, there's a video that would go with that. We'll send all these out to you. The single most important factor is improving shop floor efficiency. We have lots of tools to make sure that those things are done, and we can tie everything together with inventory so that you're not having to buy things and keep them in your shelves for an inordinate amount of time. You're going to know in advance when you have something scheduled to go in production, what exactly I need to know. What of those items are already committed to other areas? And if it's already committed, what is my min-max? Is it going to be affected on my inventory count? How many purchase orders do I have for different customers looking for the same thing, so that when my purchasing department goes to buy the raw material and the third-party purchased items, they know overall what's needed for the X number of production days, and then what the lead time for that is. So if one of your suppliers can't make it, you know right away that I can get X amount from this supplier, I can get Y amount from that supplier, and I can keep working ahead to achieve my customer promise date. So again, maximizing plant floor throughput. This is another area where we know the money's made on the shop floor. You know, we have smart machines, you've got the MES side of things. That brings you into Industry 4.0, which is a term you may or may not have heard of. So Industry 4.0 is where the shop floor is no longer disconnected from the front office. So the shop floor, the front office, you know, the C-suite, the owner, you know, whatever it may be, they all have access to this information. The nice thing is we can backflush that info when we go ahead and consume it and make those finished goods. We can make sure that the inventory is adjusted right away. We're not waiting for the end of shift, and then the next shift finds out that the inventory is depleted. Maintenance repair, the MRO side and the automation, all of that's tied together. And this is basically how it looks. This is how we get really a mainstream manufacturer integrated with the DELMIAWorks side of it. We've got all these different areas that tie together and talk to each other, which is really a new area that a lot of companies are not actually achieving. Their idea of having the production or scheduling area talk to somebody is either creating a whiteboard that somebody snaps a photo of and sends it around the company, or somebody spending an awful lot of time using Microsoft Project to go and fill things in. It's made live for other people to take a look at it. But the moment there's a change, again, you've got to have somebody go back into Microsoft Project to make those updates. And then they have to get people to be able to see them. So we have all sorts of automation available to go ahead and make sure these components are not only tied together, but people's dashboards can come up. The manufacturing side of things, the operations manager can see exactly what's happening on his shop floor. What are the machines that are running? What's the next product that needs to be set up and moved ahead? Are there maintenance aspects that would be done on certain machines? Do I have the manpower to run my next shift? All of those fun things are all tied together with the system.
So one of the buzzwords today is pivot, pivoting your business. And the one thing about this software is that it will give you the ability to know and understand what happens when you add something into the system that you may or may not have been expecting. So it's always good to know that you've got all your machines talking to each other and have a good idea of what happens if something new gets put into the system.
Exactly. So here we can see that we've got all the different components tied together. This drawing is a little bit more complicated, so let's show you a more simplified view. Everything here in blue, these are all the standard modules that come with the DELMIAWorks system. And pretty much you can just see here that every department that you would be working with has a module with data that's available for them right out of the box. So very much it's simplified to go ahead and put this in and have all your people cognizant of what the data is that's moving around your company. And as we said earlier, we've got various modules here that you see in white. And what they do is they give you added functionality when you're ready for it. And that could be a part of the initial implementation. Quite often we'll go ahead and we'll add the warehouse management into the system. We'll go ahead and we'll put in product lifecycle management or tooling and product management. Maybe somebody wants to have some SPC and data collection where they've got a very well-rounded QA department. They have lots of information, and all that data can then get tied into not only the jobs that are running, but you can keep a history of that, and you can archive it. You can come back later and look at it, and you can make sure if you've got a warranty issue, you can see the SPC and data collection that went along with that. And we had talked earlier, if you want to do preventative maintenance, that MRO side of things, there's modules for that that all tie together. And what that really means is all of the routing information, the PO details, all that information is tied together between all of those modules. So you don't have to go and see null fields, which is, one of the big problems that we see in these systems. So we've got choices to meet your needs on how to install DELMIAWorks. We can do on-premise with your own servers. We have the ability to host and manage this on off-site, not on your servers. And we also have the ability to go and do something called software as a service, which is basically instead of buying the software outright, you can lower the total initial fee. You're basically going in and renting that software for a given period of time. And of course, at any point, you can switch between any one of these three models. And you can go ahead and say, change a SaaS model to an on-premise or to a hosted managed system. So very, very flexible to make sure that the implementation is not going to overwhelm your IT department or your IT infrastructure. So overall, the software has a very low cost of ownership. The nice thing is, because we have that single database, we don't customize the software. You can see in here, usually what happens is as there's business changes and upgrades, you can see those second, third, and as you go down, a lot of these lines take very big increases. You take big hits. And if you decide to offset this cost and wait a while, then you end up going and working with the same software over a given period of time. And what we can see here with the DELMIAWorks side of things, because we have a different structure in how we do things and how we configure things instead of customizing, you really save on all of those costs, and it keeps it a pretty flat line, and yet you still get the functionality. When new modules and update comes out, everybody gets access to them. You have a tool available where you can go ahead and put suggestions in. We'll talk to you. We'll figure out what it is you're trying to do. We'll take a look with several other customers that are using the software, make sure that it's a really good fit. It's not going to break something. And then the development team goes ahead and goes and creates that and puts that into the software. So it's a very, very good way to make sure that you get the customizations you want, but you're not paying for it with having to try to do these very painful upgrades. And I've been involved a lot of those in my previous life. And when I'm running an ERP system for myself and I'm dreading having to do an upgrade to get a very, very much needed change, but I don't want to have to go through all of the customization and testing and having to run sandboxes to see if everything works. It just takes too long and costs way too much money. So that brings us to the end. We're going to send you those videos. We are planning on doing these system dives every month. The next one's going to be to take a look and see, why is your ERP system leaving you wanting for information? We're going to dive in and show you how to take a look at what you may be missing. We're going to make sure that you can see and tell if the data is actually moving through your different modules the way it should. And then we're also going to talk about how important it is to show the shop floor what's happening. And we'll actually dive into the software for some of these. This was an introductory session, so we weren't actually going to jump into the software. But the next time we're actually going to open the software up and show you the screens, show you how easy it is to move through. Now, do we have any questions? We can open that up.
I don't see any questions right now.
Okay.
Rob is absolutely right. This webinar was meant to be an introduction to the technology, spread awareness that Javelin is now in the ERP business thanks to DELMIAWorks and the fact that it's part of the SOLIDWORKS suite of products and 3D experience. We will be following up with monthly events that will include demonstrations of the software, but don't let that hold you back. If you are looking at, or if you have some curiosity as to what the software will do for you, Rob and I are available to meet with you online to get a sense of some of the issues that you're trying to resolve. Hey, Rob, can you go back to the top of the presentation?
I can.
Yep. Yeah. So our contact information is there. So if you wanted to have a quick discussion, we've also got a website that has a world of information on it. Most of the information you see is set up in one form or another. But the whole idea is that the plan is that SOLIDWORKS is now your tool of choice, and actually it doesn't even have to be. and Javelin supports that technology. And now we're able to support you and provide more of a deeper level of service to make sure that your CAD drives your manufacturing, and the information that you generate gets consumed and into your ERP software, and it allows you to efficiently run your business and produce products to be shipped to your customers.
Now, I see there is a question. I can't see what the question is, unfortunately. I don't know if, John, if you could see that on your side.
Let me check. Why Delmia over traditional ERP like SAP or Dynamics 365?
Well, that's a great question. So one of the things you'll note with SAP, overall, SAP is very expensive to implement because it is, for lack of a better word, it is customized for your particular need. Out of the box, it doesn't really serve a lot of different companies the way it runs. You have to change all of your process to make things work the way SAP does. Likewise, with some of the other ERP platforms, there's a lot of customization required, and that's generally not mentioned to various people when you're getting these things quoted and talked about. But as you go through the process talks, and we do very, very deep discoveries with each of our customers that are looking at DELMIAWorks. We take a look exactly how things work, and we show them, okay, here's what it's going to do, here's how things move forward, is that acceptable? And here's how we can go ahead and configure things to make it work the way you want it to work. But what you'll see with a lot of these other packages are they have multiple databases. They've got multiple different modules that don't really talk to each other. A lot of these different components are made by other vendors or at different times, and they're basically ad hoc. They're attached together. They kind of come through in one interface, but that data in one module is not shared with data in another module. And that's one of the key areas that DELMIAWorks has over most other ERP companies. The other aspect is the MES side, when you're actually wanting to connect to your shop floor and have that data brought in so that everybody in other areas can see it, or it actually is data that is used to calculate or control other functions or add to other pieces of data. That shop floor information is very, very critical.
Yeah, the next question is kind of similar. Is that how flexible is it as connected with Microsoft 365, Azure? Let's say I want to use ERP only and not CRM and not the finance package.
So everything is possible. You will note, though, that when you start to go to those systems, you're going to disconnect things. And the problem with working with things like SharePoint, anything like that on the Microsoft side of things, there's not a lot of development being done to do what you want to do. Your IT department or another vendor is going to have to create a lot of that functionality. DELMIAWorks has the ability to go ahead and connect through web connections. We can connect to other databases, whether it be SQL or Oracle. We can go and set things up to where we can go and pass data back and forth to outside components. But you're going to probably find the functionality is not going to give you what you need without spending a lot of time and effort to develop that to the level that you want. It can be done, but you'll see that those costs are actually going to add up.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same theme as customizations. When you
Yeah.
talk about integrations, it's literally the same problem. You've got to make sure that if you upgrade your software to the next release, you've got to test and sandbox to make sure, okay, are my connections now still working, right? Is there something that's going to break? So those are the same type of discussions, I'd say, Rob.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And we can have a deeper discussion with somebody if they're interested in that, and we can go through some of those details. And some of the areas you're going to actually see in our future webinars that we'll be doing in the coming months. We'll be touching all of those modules, so you'll see what they do. Very easy for you to compare what's actually out there.
One thing to keep in mind, like from what we've seen, like we're talking to a lot of companies that want to grow. And they want to grow, but not have to build entire plants or add 2 times the pieces of machinery that they have, because what they have is not as efficiently being used as possible. So they want to grow, 1.5 or 2x, but have the same resources. And when you have a system that allows you to understand what's going through the shop and what material you need, when you need to bring it in, it gives you growth, but without having to grow in terms of other investments. So in a lot of those companies, they have people as well using spreadsheets for purchasing, or spreadsheets for quoting, or spreadsheets for whatever, and they're looking to move away from like their QuickBooks or their spreadsheets, accounting spreadsheets, and move into a bona fide system that's fully integrated and has tools for everybody in the business. So go ahead,
And
Ron.
that brings up a good point. And again, to add on to Jesse's question, if you want to tie it into Outlook 365, that's very easily done. It's part of the package. The email system can go ahead, send and receive email through DELMIAWorks, through your email system. When we start talking about things like you want to use the ERP side, but you don't want to use, say, the finance package, at that point, we're going to try to get into and see why. What is it that your current finance package is offering that the built-in component from DELMIAWorks is not going to offer you? And most of the things that we hear is people are used to it. However, when we look at those other finance packages, especially if it's been a smaller company that's grown and grown and grown, the reason to not change simply because I already know this is usually not enough to hold water. There's usually enough areas in those other finance packages that they're not tied into, say, purchase orders, into receipts. They're not tied into receiving the components coming in the back shop floor and you're short too. Or you're producing things and now once you've produced them and they're actually being shipped out, the invoice is automatically sent out and the CRM module is actually updated. So when say somebody in the front end sales takes a look at the CRM module, then go ahead and say, oh yeah, that order that I took from my favorite customer has actually been produced, it's actually shipped, it's actually been done, and we've invoiced it. They can see all that information in one closed area without having to jump around to a lot of different positions. So it's that whole connectivity area that we really need to speak to somebody about when they want to just go ahead and put certain modules in. One of the biggest things we can do is we can take the MES module and we can tie that into something like, say, SAP. So because SAP doesn't have an MES side of things, we can tie our module into that SAP or the Dynamics 365. So there are certain areas that we can do this cross-pollination of data and make it work well, but we really need to have a deep discussion on that with the individuals.
That's a great point. And yeah, those are two great questions. And as Rob mentioned, we're available to have deeper dive discussions to understand better and to be able to confirm which direction, which option would be, the most, the optimal one. So, okay, so there's no other questions. Again, Rob, was there anything else that you want to add to this?
No, I'll send out the playlist. My apologies for it taking too long to get through and get those videos. I'm not sure why they're running slowly, but we'll send you out a playlist with all of those.
Yes, and we will do a follow-up call, and thank you very much again for your time. Trust that this was informative for you. There is additional information on our website, and we are available for discussions to talk about how this solution can fit into your business. So again, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to following up these conversations with you one-on-one.
Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, have a great day. Thank you. Goodbye.